I've been asked today to coordinate something that's never happened before. That's the Tourism Council, but I think it also means how to get lots of people onto this stage at once, which will be my next task. I'm delighted to host this session, Not Talk But Action, where we will demonstrate that the best way to predict the future is indeed to create it. Today, as Helen has already said in her speech, we're announcing the launch of the very first Tourism Council. Congratulations to the BHA and to Helen Grant for making this happen. It's something I know the BHA, with our industry colleagues, have been asking for a long time. It's very exciting for all of us to see it come to life here today. So with Helen already on stage, I'd like to call up Simon Vincent, EMEA President of Hilton Worldwide, who has agreed to be the chair of the Tourism Council. Simon. I'm going to join you here. Just the two of the three of us to start with.
I thought there was going to be just the one of us.
Helen, I have a couple of questions for you to start. Why is this council going to be so important?
Well, it's important because the sector is so important, and as I said in my speech, tourism, hospitality, travel are making a huge contribution to the economy. 32 million visitors and 21 billion pounds in terms of spend. And of course we want that success to continue. It must continue, that the country needs it, and we want to give as much support as possible. We also know, I was a businesswoman for many years, and in fact I've only been a politician for the last 4, but I do know how important it is, if you're going to make the right decisions, that you listen to the people who are working at the coalface day in, day out, doing the business. And certainly from my point of view as Minister for Tourism, and from Matthew's point of view, we want to really hear what the industry has to say, what the challenges are, what the problems are, how we can really go forward together. Mm-hmm. And we think that partnership working, joint working, is the right way to do that. We've had very effective results in terms of the GREAT campaign in relation to joint and partnership working. And that is the reason why we've created the council. And I think it will be a very good vehicle for us to be able to listen, hear you, and of course for the industry to be able to tell ministers, just as we're sitting here now, exactly what they feel about certain issues. And of course we must listen.
Indeed. And what do you think that the key strengths of the council are going to be?
Well, the council is going to do an awful lot. I think the main strength is partnership working. We haven't yet been able to decide on the agenda. We have our first meeting, I believe, on the 10th of July. And at that point we will discuss our work programme. I expect that we will be covering, of course, jobs and skills and enterprise. But for me personally, in terms of strength and the types of things that we might be able to achieve, something that's very close to my heart, and having been the Minister for Tourism for 7 months now, this is something that I'm constantly reminded about, and that is the need to dispel the myth that this business, this industry, this sector is not just starter jobs. Mm-hmm. And although many of us, probably got our first jobs in travel and tourism, I know I did. I was a waitress in an Indian restaurant in Carlisle, in Cumbria, during university holidays. But the point is, yes, it does provide starter jobs. It's a big employer of women and young people. But the other point that I think we really need to put forward as a group, that it can also provide very fulfilling, rewarding and valuable careers. And I think, the people in this room here today are living proof of that.
Thank you. Simon, some questions for you.
Sure.
What was your main motivation for chairing the Tourism Council, and what do you think it can achieve?
Listen, I think I see it as a unique opportunity for us to put tourism at the heart of the government policy agenda. Helen's already said how important the tourism sector is to our economic growth and well-being. And let's face it, we as a tourism industry have been crying out to be heard by the government, and I think it's a really positive initiative that the government have listened to those cries. I'd like to congratulate the BHA for working with the government to put this council together. And I think we have to, as an industry, seize the opportunity. It's clear that we have a major contribution to make to the economic growth and well-being of this country in terms of job creation, in terms of growth, in terms of innovation, in terms of reskilling. And it's great that we have a platform now and that we as an industry have a voice in government.
And what then would you say are the council's main objectives from a business perspective?
Look, I think we've got to reinforce the UK's position on the world stage as an attractive place to visit with unique experiences and as a place that people want to come to experience the best of British hospitality. In its simplest form, that's what I think our objectives has to be. Now, if we can, in doing that, help some of those secondary initiatives in terms of jobs, in terms of growth, in terms of innovation, in terms of reskilling, that's got to be good. And I think the fact that this is a cross-departmental government initiative supported at the highest level can only be good for our industry.
So what do you think is the single biggest challenge from a skills and recruitment point of view in the UK tourism industry, and how do you think that can be tackled?
If you take the fact that tourism is a growth industry, and I think we can see that in all the projections that we've all seen and we've heard from people today tell us that this is a growth sector. If you take that as read, then we have to, I think, reskill, and we have to change the perceptions of the industry because I think it's absolutely critical that we are able to show people that this is a great place to work, that you can have a career and not just a job in this industry. Our very own chief executive of Hilton Worldwide, Chris Nassetta, started as a bellboy. He's now chief executive of one of the largest global hotel companies. But I think also it's a profession. If you look again at my very own business, we're about opening and developing new hotels. We've got 127 hotels in the UK today. We've got another 27 in the pipeline. To get those hotels up and running, we need lawyers to negotiate the contracts. We need engineers to build the hotels. We need financial people to manage the cash flows and count the numbers. We need sales and marketing people to fill the hotels. We need linguists. And we need linguists on a global basis as well. So I think addressing the skills gap that is there right now, if we are to achieve the promise that this sector has in terms of growth, I think is absolutely critical. And if we can convince people and change perceptions around the professionalism of our industry, the growth opportunities in our industries, the fact that it is a career choice for people, it's not just a staging post for waiting for another job. And I think there are numerous examples of that. And if we can convince people that this is a place where they can have a fruitful career, I think we'll be all the better for that. And you've only got to look into Europe and look at some of the higher education institutions there, the Hôtel Écolier in Lausanne, in Glion, in The Hague. They get some of the brightest students into those universities and those further education institutions because it is seen as a career, because it is seen as a great place to work. And that's what I think we've got to do in this country.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Minister. I think we can all be in absolutely no doubt as to your commitment and enthusiasm for the Tourism Council. I'd now like to invite the other members of the panel to join us on stage. If I could begin with Penelope, Lady Cobham, who's the chairman of Visit England. We could all welcome Lady Cobham to the stage. Thank you. Yes, please. Next we have Patrick Dempsey, OBE, Managing Director of Whitbread Hotels and Restaurants. Thank you. Stephen McCall, Chief Operating Officer, UK and Ireland, and Head of Europe Operations at Intercontinental Hotels Group. Thank you. And next we have Ufi, who we've all met, CEO of the British Hospitality Association. Welcome again. Gary Morrison, Senior Vice President Retail, Brand Expedia Worldwide. Gary, welcome. Thank you. And finally, Peter Suddock, Chief Executive Officer, Dudley Zoo. Welcome, Peter. You're in the right place. I would like to start with a question for Lady Cobham, please. What role do you believe that your organisation can play in the Tourism Council?
Well, I would suggest, Karen, quite a wide-ranging one, because Visit England, which is the National Tourist Board for England, and just to add to Helen's statistics, 106 billion going into the economy through tourism in England, of which some 50% is domestic, that are links between a wide range of those within the industry and with government, which exist already, enable us to share those contacts. And we understand, I think, quite well now, the opportunities and the challenges which both sides face. And it isn't just with BIS and with the Culture Department, which is our sponsor department, but with the Transport Department, with communities and local government, and a range of other departments, including DEFRA. Secondly, Karen, I think that we can add our experience in overseeing the quality grading scheme, the STAR scheme, for all accommodation, and as Fergus said earlier, the important subject of accessibility, which we've done a great deal of work on. And that gives us a channel of intelligence through to some very small businesses, which collectively, of course, employ a huge number of people. Thirdly, I am completely wedded to our research and insights team, whom I rate hugely highly, but more importantly, so do many others. And we supply information to a whole range of different, both local government, central government, and the industry. And we would provide this information to the council, and that ranges from volume and value data sets through to future trends understanding impacting on domestic tourism over the next 10 years. We would, as we've heard, Karen, earlier today, how important outside London is, we would like to make sure that the council understand life, as Peter knows only too well, outside London as well as inside London. And then finally, to bring to the council are over 300 organisations who are our partners and stakeholders, which range from local enterprise partnerships through to local government, but also quite different organisations like the national parks and the forests, who again employ a great many people. My chief executive, Karen, will sit on the council, so I can join with the audience here to look forward to witnessing the outcomes of the council.
Thank you very much, Lady Cobham. Ufi.
I thought people were going to applaud.
We should applaud.
We should applaud, yes.
Ufi, I actually have a question for you next. I know that you've been campaigning for this sort of group to come together for a very long time. What does it actually mean to you now that you've achieved this?
Well, it's true. We have lobbied solidly for 3 years, and we really did that for two reasons. One was because this industry employs close to 3 million people in the United Kingdom. We know that by 2020 we have the opportunity to be able to grow another 300,000 jobs for the United Kingdom. We've committed, and the chairman of the Big Conversation is sitting next to me, so Patrick will talk about that, 60,000 opportunities for 16 to 24-year-olds. So this is an industry that deserves to have a position at the heart of government. And the second reason that we've been lobbying for this is because we've actually observed very closely the establishment of a similar council in the United States of America, which was led by President Obama and which brought together ministers from across different departments of government in the US. And we've seen over the past few years the huge impact that that has had on the success and growth of the industry in the United States. So seeing those two aspects for us really made it absolutely critical to actually have the support. And I have to say, all credit is due to Helen, to our Minister of Tourism, for listening, and to Matt Hancock as well, to whom we're hugely appreciative of actually taking the step to afford our industry with a council that gives us that voice within the centre of government in the United Kingdom, so that we can really drive forward job creation and also help to equip thousands of people in this country with the skills required for an industry that is going to continue to grow.
Thank you, Afi. Steve. Taking applause now. Stephen, a question for you. What would you like to see the very first steps that the council should take?
Well, I think Helen said it already. We hadn't had a meeting yet, so I think an agenda would be a good start for next month. I don't mean that flippantly, I think it's much harder than it sounds, frankly, because the scope is potentially enormous. I mean, we've got broad terms of reference, but I think understanding how we're going to work together, understanding what partnership actually looks like, will be a very first and very important step. And when you think about things like, we chuck the phrase around a lot, but think about working better together. It starts with a shared understanding, and this is an incredible opportunity to do that, because I like to sort of measure the journey we're on by these sort of occasions, these summits. You think about the last two that we've had. We've been trying to align our own voice a bit more internally, and the messages have been very broadcast out the way. And for the first time, I think we've got a real platform and mechanism with government to have a collective discussion and try and reach that understanding. I know that skills will be very high on the agenda, but I think it's a great opportunity to widen it a little bit, although clearly less is more, I think, in this case.
There clearly will be very high expectations for this task force, and apart from skills, what do you think its other priorities should be?
I think expectations will be high. I mean, I haven't heard too much yet from. It'd be good to understand actually what the audience expectations are like, but I think there's an enormous responsibility in us all to take the best, make best use of this opportunity, which we've been asking for a few years now. I think we have some challenges, right? We've heard some of them today. We've had challenges with VAT. We've seen some progress in immigration, on loosening visas to particularly for emerging markets. We've got a lot more still to do in that. But at the same time, talking particularly about jobs and skills, we need to be very clear about what it is that this business does currently and what the potential looks like in the future. So it's a bit of a quid pro quo. We can do this for you, speaking collectively as the industry to the country. But in return, we need certain things. And I think having a much more balanced sort of angle to our lobbying particularly will be much more effective in outcomes. So that's my guess. I mean, the chair's primary responsibility will be to set the agenda, so they may feel differently. Hopefully not.
Total agreement. Patrick Dempsey, jobs and skills are clearly a key priority. What do you think needs to be done here?
Well, I think firstly it's great that this council's been put together on the basis of what can our industry do around jobs and skills. And I think, as has been said, that gives us a real leverage with government to sort of put that on the table. And from my point of view, and selfishly under the big hospitality conversation, under the BHA, we really want to try and generate lots of jobs for young people. And, with nearly 1 million young people out there, and the fact we're going to create 300,000 new jobs in hospitality by 2020. And I know that UFI hates targets and retargets, but it's not beyond the wit of man that we could take a third of those new jobs that we're creating, those 300,000 jobs, and work on the council to say, how could we generate over the next 5-6 years, how could we generate 100,000 of those jobs to go to that 16 to 24-year-old population? Because it is a start in life. We have apprenticeship schemes across the businesses. We can do work experience to attract new young people to our industry, so they don't join us and leave us because they know then what they're coming into. So I think jobs and skills is a fantastic foundation, but I think we should use that then to leverage discussions on other areas. As we deliver our targets, we want government to talk more with us then about other things that we might want to tackle, like airport runways, like VAT, like better visa alignment. So I think jobs and skills is at the heart of it. I think it means that government have really woken up and seen what we can do, and I think we've got to use that in the council.
Because our sector has changed greatly in the past decade, hasn't it? And what do you perceive to be the biggest changes so far as you're concerned? And do you think the sector, for example, has kept up with emerging technology?
Well, I think the nice thing about our sector, to a degree, although things do change, is that at the end of the day, people need to come and eat in a restaurant and they need to sleep in a bed. You can't do it all holistically, or you can't ship it to your home, although you can with food. But in the hotel sector, I think it is something you need to consume in the hotel and do it. However, life has changed massively. In my own business, I run Premier Inn. I mean, if you go back 10, 15 years, budget hotels were 2 or 3%. Today, they're a much bigger percentage. So people's changing habits. And in technology, I think technology is the biggest change we have seen, and is the biggest change. And whatever has happened today over the last 10 years will probably happen again in 1 year at an increased speed. And how people buy hotels, there's talk about collaborative communities and sharing economies with people like Airbnb. Life is changing, and I think we need to keep abreast of it. It's probably fine for big companies who can invest in it, but I think under the BHA we also need to help, and maybe under the council, help some of the smaller businesses about how they can react to changes.
And Gary, I know that the changing face of the sector is something that's of particular interest to you. How do you think the industry should ensure that it's relevant and appealing, for example, to the millennial generation?
Well, I think I'd start off the question just with a show of hands. How many people have actually booked travel online here, please? Right. If you were going to ask that question probably 10 years ago, the answer would have been zero. And online travel today is about a $1 trillion industry. It's absolutely huge, and it's one of the few areas which in many parts of the world is still showing double-digit growth. And when I think about the advances in technology, of course, when we look at Expedia, we think it very much as an online travel agent. But then if I look at tourism much more broadly, and my colleague here has just mentioned how it's changing so much in the hotel sector. When we talk about jobs and skills, for me, I think it's, of course, there is always going to be the emphasis on service, but I think a lot of the messages that we can be giving to the younger generation is a lot of those jobs are actually in technology. The whole area around sales and marketing for the tourism sector is increasingly dominated by technology-driven solutions if you want to reach new pockets of demand, not just in the UK, but internationally. So I really think that as we craft our jobs and skills sort of agenda, that we need to make sure that we position that in a way that a significant amount of these jobs ought to be technology focused.
And do you think that will be the role of your own organisation in relation to the Tourism Council? Will that be your key focus?
It'll be one of the key focuses. One of the other things there's two other things I think I'd like for us to perhaps participate and bring to the council. One, clearly as one of the largest online travel agents, we invest something close to about 360 million pounds a year just on technology. We have a reasonably good view about where the industry is going, and how the younger generation, for example, are using smartphones to book travel, or tablets, or desktop. So we can bring, I think, a lot of what's happening from the demand side, on the technology side, how people are using technology to book travel. I think the other thing is we will be able to help, as indeed we have helped Visit Britain, think about how they can very accurately target different markets, like, for example, to increase the proportion of visitors from China, or increase the proportion of visitors to the US. And hopefully, just through best practice sharing, sort of say these are some of the tools and techniques that can be used to drive up more tourism into the UK. And I think the last one probably is we are an employer that's the same as many others on this, and we contribute through initiatives like the Big Alliance, which is a scheme that's run by Islington, where our head office is, and we use a lot of opportunities to some of the underprivileged communities there, and we help bring them in and mentor them, give them free technology training sessions, and obviously leverage some of the things that we can do.
Thank you, Gary. I haven't, perhaps just one more question for Peter in particular, really aligned to the employment aspect here. The industry does have a reputation for low pay and long hours. Do you think that's the reality, and if so, how do we change that?
Depends where you are. I don't think it is, actually. I think internally it doesn't. I think people work extremely hard and are highly skilled, but I don't think we tell the story well enough. The employees we have are dedicated, and they work long hours because they enjoy the job, and that isn't a forced issue. It's because they want to do a very good job for the customers, and I see that across the sector. I don't think it's, and I think if you said the same about manufacturing, you'd say the same. They work long hours, but it isn't valued by the public in the same way. So I don't quite see it in the same way. It used to be, but I think it's changing rapidly.
And are the trainees and apprentices that you're seeing coming through, do you think they have the right skill sets?
Not really. I think one of the problems we have is that the youth coming through aren't used to the customer-facing things, because they've been so used to sat on an Xbox or whatever. To get them to talk to people is really quite a challenge. We don't have too much of a problem because we stick an animal with them and and the animals are far more entertaining. But really is, and yes, come have a look. But the real problem is their ability to engage, and I think we've got a bit of a challenge across society with that. And there are ways we've got to improve that relationship. And I think that's really one of the big challenges this industry's got, is being able to communicate well.
Thank you, Peter. Do we have time for a couple of questions of you? Do we have some questions from the audience? Yes, we have a lady down here in the front row.
Hello. You talk a lot about the perception change of the industry, and yes, it's a huge issue. The same goes, for example, for retail industry. And I remember I was reading an article in Retail Week a while back where I think a head of retail for New Look was commenting that a teacher in the school that her children are going to told someone that if you're not going to pay attention, you're actually going to end up working on a shop floor. And that's an unfortunate thing, exactly the same as the hospitality is perceived. However, for example, if you look at any other industries like technology, for example, or fashion, or any other industries like that, a lot of different successful people are being used as literally as spokespeople for those industries, but from different areas of the business. And unfortunately, a lot where the young people are thinking is that it's only the customer service facing, whereas, like you very well pointed out, it is actually the technology, the support, the HR. And by showing those successful people and showing that they build their careers and they've been extremely passionate about what they're doing, this might be one simple way of introducing that to young people as a valuable option for their careers.
Stephen, would you like to
I do have a
comment?
comment on that, if you don't mind, actually. I don't think the answer to making the service business attractive is to promise people jobs in technology. I really genuinely don't, and I don't understand why. No, but it was one of the discussions, right? And I think you touched on it briefly there, but I think we've got away from the essence of our business, which is engagement with people. That is effectively what we do. It's what we're all about. And I think we have a responsibility, as we heard earlier on, to communicate the value in that and the fun and the passion that you get from that sort of a business. And if you look at food, for example, and the success of the celebrity chefs, I can only imagine what it must feel like if you are an aspiring sous chef and you think you might follow on that path. And that's been a very visible example of a career which probably a few years ago wasn't so attractive. And I've heard the same thing as you. Don't do well, you end up stacking shelves. So we've got to be very careful that we are a lot clearer about what service means, and that it doesn't become a dirty word, because it would be the death of our business.
Can I just say something on that as well? I would have to agree with you as well. I don't think we make enough noise. I don't think we shout about how good we are. I mean, there are some fantastic successful role models in this room. I mean, we've got 8 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of you, yeah, all of you sitting on this panel. And you started pretty much at the bottom of your organisation, did you, Simon? And you've worked your own way up. And I think that's the message that we need to tell our children, that, you know, that needs to come out at school. It needs to come out when they're making decisions about whether they go into tourism, travel and hospitality at university. And I don't think we're doing it well enough. So I think we've got to show off, and I think we've got to shout about how well people can do if they go into the business, and how rewarding and enjoyable it can be.
Thank you, Minister. I think, Patrick, did you want to make a final comment here?
The other thing I'd say about all of that, attracting people to our industry, how many people in the room here have a work experience person with them next week or next month? That's fantastic. And I think Lady Cobham's probably the only person today who's brought somebody along who's shadowing her. I don't know if she's a work experience, but I'd imagine she's come along to do it. I mean, imagine if each one of us had someone today who was shadowing us. I think the opportunity for us to go into schools to do work experience, the reason I think it's important, if a young person 14 to 17 comes in to a work experience in hospitality, be it a restaurant, a hotel, wherever it is, and has a good work experience, not given some terrible job, but has a range of jobs to see, sees whether he or she likes the industry, meets some role models, people like us, all the way through the organisation who have worked at the bottom, worked our way up. They can see the opportunities. They can see the opportunity in digital, marketing, sales, finance, all the different areas. And they can go away then and make a choice about whether hospitality is for them. And I think it's a big issue, work experience. I went to a school in Eltham a few weeks ago where 27 children out of 170 were able to get a work placement this summer. And it's just staggering how little industry does that. And I think that's something we should do more of.
Karen, can I say that Simon's being very modest by not piping up here, but at the beginning of Tourism Week, we launched with Hilton, on the top of the Trafalgar Hilton, with a number of their trainees. And they were people who were so inspiring in the way in which they told their stories, and they were so excited. And I asked every single one of them whether they wished to stay in the sector. And to a girl and a boy, they said absolutely they did. And the more I think that we can get people to speak up, young people to speak up for themselves, is inspiring.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Lady Cobham. Thank you to the rest of the panel.
Karen, can I just, sorry to interrupt,
sorry,
can I just say
Simon.
one? I see there's a lot of hands and a lot of questions out there. I just wanted to make a commitment that I will find a way of communicating with all of you so that as we pull our agenda together for the first meeting, we solicit views and we make sure that we embrace a lot of the views and opinions that are in the room that haven't had a chance to share their comments or questions today. So
time doesn't permit, sadly, but I'm sure everyone in the room will be very much looking forward to seeing the outcomes of the first meeting on the 10th of July of the first Tourism Council. So please do show your appreciation to the panel. Thank you. Lunch is going to be served now in the Chablis Suite on the ground floor. There is a very packed programme this afternoon, starting off at 1:45 with Dr. Graham Codrington, who is holding a seminar called Mind Your Language on the Needs of Our Future Customers. So please be back here promptly at 1:45. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.